The ballroom at the Drake shimmered beneath the golden chandeliers, filled with the soft sound of laughter and clinking glasses. 25 years of marriage were supposed to be celebrated that night. I stood beside my husband, Grant Whitaker, smiling politely, completely unaware that the life I had built for decades was seconds away from collapsing. Grant raised his glass, his expression calm, almost rehearsed. 25 years, he began, letting the crowd settle. And I think that's long enough. A nervous laugh rippled through the guests until he unfolded a set of papers from his jacket. Tessa, these are divorce papers. I want someone young now. You can move out tomorrow. The air thickened with silence. My heart pounded, but I refused to let him see me break. I reached for the microphone, my hand steady. Before anyone applauds Grant's bravery, I said, my voice clear and even, you might want to hear my side of the story first. My name is Tessa Monroe, and for 25 years I believed I had a stable marriage. I worked as a financial controller for a development company in downtown Chicago, while my husband Grant managed operations for a construction firm. We met in college, young and ambitious, and built a life that looked perfect from the outside. We never had children, though not for lack of trying. After years of tests and quiet disappointment, we accepted our childless home as our normal. My parents helped us buy our River North condo, a gift they said was for our future. I thought that future meant the two of us growing old together. Grant loved to present himself as a man who had it all: career, charm, success. But lately I had started noticing how easily he used the word successful, as if it was a crown he wore alone. It was a quiet Wednesday night when I first heard the whispers. The digital clock on my nightstand read 3:07 a.m. Grant wasn't in bed. I heard him in the hallway, his voice low and urgent. Yes, Mom, he said. She won't suspect a thing. We'll do it right after the anniversary. I froze, barely breathing. His mother, Vivian Whitaker, had always been polite but distant with me, her tone sweet but her eyes sharp. What could they possibly be plotting together? When I heard the floor creak, I quickly shut my eyes and pretended to be asleep. Grant slipped into bed beside me, careful not to wake me, but his breathing was too quick, too restless. The next morning he was overly affectionate, bringing me coffee in bed, smiling too much. How about we pick a restaurant for our anniversary dinner, he said. It was strange. In 25 years, Grant had never once been this eager to celebrate anything that wasn't about himself. 2 days later, I heard the familiar knock of my mother-in-law, Vivian Whitaker. She never waited for an invitation. She walked in wearing her usual pearls and a smile so tight it could cut glass. Tessa, dear, she said sweetly, glancing around the living room as though inspecting it. Are you preparing for the big anniversary dinner? Trying to, I replied carefully. She sat down, crossing her legs with deliberate grace. You've made this condo quite cozy, she said, her tone implying it was modest at best. Then, casually, she added, by the way, where do you keep the condo papers? You know, in case anything happens. It's always wise to plan ahead. My pulse quickened. They're safe, I said, keeping my expression neutral. Vivian smiled, satisfied. Good. Grant is not getting any younger, and without grandchildren. It's smart to think about who'll inherit things one day. Maybe my nephews, they're such hardworking boys. When she finally left, her perfume lingered in the air, sickly sweet. I stood by the window piecing things together, the late-night call, her questions about property, Grant's sudden affection. The pattern was becoming clearer, and it frightened me. That evening, while Grant was in the shower, I sat on the edge of the bed staring at his laptop. He had always used the same simple password, our anniversary date, but when I tried it, it didn't work. My stomach turned. For 25 years, Grant had never locked me out of anything. I tried a few combinations, even his birthday, then finally reversed the numbers of our wedding date. The screen unlocked. My hands trembled as I opened his browser history. The search results hit me like a blow: how to keep condo and divorce, spousal rights and property division, how to make a spouse sign a waiver. I scrolled further emails to a lawyer named Philip Dalton, drafts of legal agreements. He had been planning this for weeks. Just then, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. A calendar alert flashed across the screen. Call L at 11 a.m. L, I whispered. Not lawyer. Lena, maybe. I closed everything quickly before he came out of the shower. When he smiled at me and kissed my cheek, I smiled back. But inside, something had already shifted. I wasn't the same woman he thought he could deceive. The next afternoon, my phone buzzed with a call from my longtime friend, Candace. Her voice sounded uneasy. "Tessa, I just saw Grant," she said. "He was at the jewelry store in Oakbrook Mall with a young woman. They were looking at rings." My chest tightened. "Rings?" I asked softly. Yes, she was blonde, maybe early 30s, dressed like she walked out of a magazine. She was holding onto his arm like they were already engaged. For a moment I couldn't speak. Candace hesitated. "I'm so sorry, Tess. I thought you should know." I forced a steady tone. "Thank you, Candace. You did the right thing." After hanging up, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the half-empty cup of coffee in front of me. So that was it, Lena. The mysterious L. Grant wasn't just planning to leave me. He was replacing me. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply sat at my desk and opened my laptop. If Grant was preparing his exit, I would prepare mine. I began forwarding every incriminating email and text I had discovered to my personal account, then saved them on a small flash drive. I made copies of our financial statements, insurance documents, and property tax bills, anything that might matter later. The next morning, before heading to work, I stopped by the bank. With a calm voice and a polite smile, I requested to transfer half of our joint savings into an account under my name only. The teller didn't ask questions. Within minutes, the transfer was done. As I walked out of the bank, the cold Chicago wind brushed against my face, but I felt stronger than I had in years. This wasn't revenge, it was protection. If Grant wanted to play games with lawyers and lies, fine. But I was no longer the woman who ignored the signs. I was the woman quietly taking control of her future. That evening, I called an old friend from college, Karina Patel. She had become a respected family attorney in Chicago. When she picked up the phone, I could barely keep my voice steady. "Karina, I need your help. It's about Grant," I said quietly. We met the next morning in her office overlooking the river. After I told her everything, the late-night calls, the lawyer, the mistress, Karina leaned forward, her expression sharp but kind. "Tessa, you did the right thing saving those documents," she said, "but you have to stay quiet. The moment he knows you figured him out, he'll move faster." She explained in plain language how the law actually works. There's a difference between marital and separate property. Anything your parents gifted you before or outside of the marriage, like your River North condo, is legally yours. He can't touch it unless he proves he invested significantly in it. I nodded slowly. "He didn't invest a dime." "Good," Karina said. "Then we'll use that, gather evidence, keep records, and don't let emotions show. The calmer you stay, the stronger your position." As I left her office, she placed a hand on my shoulder. "You're not powerless, Tessa. You just have to play your cards right." For the first time in days, I felt hope flicker inside me. 3 days later, a thick envelope arrived by certified mail from Germany. The sender's name made my breath catch. Ingrid Meyer, my father's older sister. She had passed away 2 months earlier, and the letter came from her attorney. I sat at the dining table, unfolding the documents carefully. My aunt had left her entire estate to me, her only niece. Included were a condo in Munich worth nearly $100,000, a beachfront property in Naples, Florida, and more than $1 million in cash spread across 2 European accounts. For a long moment, I just stared at the papers. I wanted to cry, not from greed but from relief. While Grant was scheming to take away what he thought was mine, life had quietly handed me a future that was entirely my own. I filed every document in a separate folder, locked it in my desk, and told no one. Not yet. I would use this inheritance to start over when the time was right. As the sun dipped behind the skyline, I whispered to myself, "You're not trapped anymore, Tessa. He just doesn't know it yet." The following week, I decided to see the battlefield for myself. Grant had mentioned that our anniversary dinner would be held at the Drake Hotel, one of Chicago's most elegant venues. I called the manager, pretending to be confirming details on his behalf. She was delighted to assist. "Mr. Whitaker booked the Gold Coast Ballroom for 100 guests, she said proudly. "Dinner, open bar, live band, he requested the very best." "How much did he pay?" I asked softly. $45,000, she replied without hesitation. I thanked her and hung up, my hands tightening around the phone. He was using our joint money to fund my public humiliation. As I walked through the hotel lobby, I spotted a tall blonde woman by the entrance, laughing on her phone. Her voice was high and sugary. "The ballroom is stunning, Dee," she said. "I can already picture our first party there." So this was Herlina Hart, young, confident, and utterly unaware that I was standing just a few feet away. I turned and walked out quietly, the cold wind cutting across Michigan Avenue. The woman who was supposed to be the victim had just seen her rival and memorized the setting of her own revenge. The night before our anniversary, the city glowed outside my window. I sat at my desk again, surrounded by folders, papers, and my laptop. Every document was organized: financial records, the condo deed, my aunt's inheritance papers, and screenshots of Grant's messages. I uploaded digital copies to a secure cloud account, labeled each file carefully, and placed the originals in a plain manila envelope. Then I locked it inside the safe beneath my desk. Grant was out late again, probably finalizing his big plans. I made myself a cup of tea and glanced at our wedding photo on the bookshelf. We were smiling then, young and certain that forever was real. I whispered to that photograph, "Tomorrow you'll find out who you married." It wasn't anger that kept me awake that night. It was focus, the kind that comes when you know exactly what you have to do. The next evening, the drake shimmered with gold and white decor. The ballroom was filled with laughter, music, and the faint clinking of glasses. Everyone was there: Grant's colleagues, my co-workers, his mother Vivian in her pearls, smiling as if she had already won something. At the center table, I sat beside Grant, calm and silent. He seemed restless, his hands trembling slightly as he adjusted his tie. I knew the act he was about to perform. When the host announced his name, Grant stood, took the microphone, and flashed his rehearsed smile. "Friends," he began, "25 years with one person is no small thing. But sometimes life shows us that people grow apart. What felt right years ago may no longer fit." A murmur rippled through the room. He continued confidently, "Tonight, I want to be honest with myself and with all of you. I've made a decision to start a new chapter. Tessa and I will be parting ways." The words landed like a stone dropped in water. I could feel dozens of eyes on me. But instead of breaking, I picked up my glass and took a slow sip, waiting for my turn. My silence made him uneasy, and that was exactly what I wanted. Grant smiled tightly, thinking he had control of the moment. "Tessa," he said, his tone syrupy, "I want to thank you for these years together, but we both know it's time to move on. There's no shame in admitting that, right?" I rose slowly, my chair scraping against the marble floor. The room hushed. I reached for the microphone and met his eyes. "You're right, Grant," I said calmly. "It's time to stop lying to everyone and to myself." A few nervous laughs fluttered through the guests, unsure of what was coming. I took a breath. "The truth is, I've known about your little plan for weeks. The lawyer in the corner, Mr. Dalton. I know him. The blonde by the bar. I know her too. And the $45,000 party you paid for, that's from our joint savings account?" Gasps spread across the ballroom. Grant's face drained of color. "What are you talking about?" he stammered. "I'm talking about facts," I said, pulling a folder from my clutch. "First, this condo, you're so eager to claim it was a gift from my parents before our marriage. I have the original deed proving it's legally mine." I paused as murmurs filled the room. "Second, I recently inherited properties in Munich and Naples, and over $1 million in cash. None of it has your name on it." Grant stood frozen, jaw tight, as I set the microphone down gently. "You wanted a public announcement, darling. Here it is. You're free, just not in my house, and not with my money." For a moment, the room stood still, utter silence except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. Then chaos erupted. Guests began whispering, some gasping, others shaking their heads in disbelief. Grant's mother, Vivian, shot up from her chair, her face pale. "Tessa, you can't just—" "Oh, but I can," I interrupted, my voice steady. "Your son made this public. I'm simply finishing the conversation." Grant's boss, Mr. Mercer, stepped forward, looking furious. "Grant, I can't believe this. In front of your colleagues?" From the corner, Lena tried to slip away unnoticed, but several guests recognized her. "That's her," someone hissed. "The girlfriend." Cameras flashed as whispers turned into judgment. Grant's polished image shattered right before his eyes. I turned, walked past him, and said softly, "You built this show, Grant. I just changed the ending." 3 months later, we faced each other again, this time in a courtroom instead of a ballroom. The judge, an older woman with silver hair and calm authority, reviewed the documents spread across her bench. "Mrs. Monroe," she said, "the River North condominium was verified as a premarital gift from your parents. It remains your separate property and is not subject to division." Grant's lawyer tried to argue, but the judge silenced him with a raised hand. As for the Wisconsin cabin and the Lexus sedan, those will be divided equally. However, the court has found that Mr. Whitaker incurred personal debts totaling $43,000, none of which benefited the household. He will bear full responsibility for repayment. I sat still, listening as the gavel struck. After 25 years, my marriage officially ended with those 3 words: case dismissed. Outside the courthouse, Grant looked smaller somehow, as if the weight of his choices had finally crushed him. I walked past him into the sunlight, free at last. In the months that followed, life split into 2 very different paths. Grant lost his job soon after the court hearing. The video from our anniversary had quietly circulated online, and no company wanted to be associated with the man who humiliated his wife in public. He sold his car to pay off part of his debts and moved in with his mother, who had to downsize her home after helping him with legal fees. As for me, I took a long breath for the first time in years. I left Chicago for a while and spent the summer in Naples, Florida, at the condo my aunt had left me. Every morning I walked along the beach and let the ocean wash away what was left of my anger. It wasn't revenge that soothed me, it was peace, the kind I had built on my own terms. If you've listened this far, maybe you understand something I learned the hard way: love doesn't mean surrendering your sense of self. Trust is precious, but it isn't blindness. When you share a life with someone, keep a quiet record of your foundations, your deeds, your savings, your agreements. Not because you expect betrayal, but because you value security. If a spouse ever tries to confuse you with paperwork or guilt, pause, ask questions. Protect what's rightfully yours. The law isn't about who shouts the loudest, it's about evidence and timing. My story isn't just about a failed marriage, it's about finding dignity when someone tries to take it away. So, to anyone listening who feels small or powerless, you're not. You can stand tall without raising your voice. All it takes is calm, clarity, and the quiet courage to say enough. In the end, I didn't win by shouting nor by hating. I won by standing in my truth and refusing to be erased. Grant thought he was orchestrating a grand finale, but all he did was open the curtain for my new beginning. If this story found you on a night when you're doubting your worth, let it remind you peace after pain is possible. You can rebuild even from the ruins of betrayal. Thank you for staying with me until the end. If my story resonated with you, share it so it might reach someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment telling me where you're watching from, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay for the next story, because healing, like truth, always finds its way.